Everyone, and welcome to the Ispring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share Ispring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Alice, and I will be the moderator for today's session. And today we are going to talk about using communication models to design effective e-learning. And to cover this topic, we've invited a guest expert, an associate professor, and a big Ispring fan, Danny Sims. So Danny will talk and will share how he has managed to create um, personal and rich feelings, learning opportunities for his uh, master's degree students by incorporating instructional design techniques, Ispring products, and some other uh, media development platforms. Hi, Danny. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very nervous. I think there's lots of people from close to where I live. Hi, Jasmine. I'm very close to you on the Gold Coast. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for giving me some time today.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay. Can you see my screen, Alice?
Yes.
And everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Everything is okay.
I can't see the chat box at the moment, unfortunately, but I'll communicate through Alice. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the ASEAN region, etc. The broad name of the topic today is Communication Models to Design Effective E-Learning. Very briefly, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Danny Sims. I'm an Associate Professor in Leadership Studies through the University of Applied Research and Development from New Zealand. I also run a small consulting company in culture and capability growth. I've owned and managed Australian RTOs, registered training organisations, and also managed international colleges. I'm a certified reach and emotional intelligence coach and practitioner to do with behavioural neurosciences and culture and capability growth. I'm a long-term developer of e-learning content. I first started in the late 90s, probably before Ispring actually sprung into existence. I'm a massive fan of Ispring for lots of reasons. And for those of you who don't know, this is absolutely not a paid gig. I do it because I love the product and I love the value that I can create for the learners. A little bit more about me. I was impolitely asked to leave school at 15 years of age. I really wasn't a good student, and the current pedagogy of the learning models that were used in the late 70s just didn't fit my brain, and I was essentially told there's no place for you in the education system. There's no point you coming back to school. So I left school at age 15. I came very late to learning. The concept of lifelong learning didn't really hit me until my late 20s, early 30s. What I'm going to talk to you today about is very much driven by my own personal learning experiences and a core ethos of mine, which is essentially learning for all. I've been told so many times during my life that I'm not smart enough, or this type of learning isn't available for me, etc. So a bit of a personal ethos for me is to ensure that anyone that is willing and is able to have an opportunity to learn is given that opportunity. So that's very, very briefly a little bit about me. So what am I going to discuss today? It's an information session whereby I hope to inspire all of you or some of you to consider looking at e-learning design and e-learners in general through a slightly different lens. And the core topics are my 400-page dilemma, throwing darts, the rationale of why I've approached the design of e-learning opportunities in this particular way, the approach that I've taken, and I'd like to give you an example of what I'm doing. I'm basing it on my and the University of Applied Research and Development's master's degree in leadership and management, and it's the first opening topic. Okay, my 400-page dilemma. The The focus of the master's degree and master's degrees in general require a higher focus on higher order taxonomies, evaluation methodologies. Short answer responses, tick and flick, multiple choice questions certainly have a place, but the level involved in a master's degree, as you certainly are aware or may be aware, requires much higher level taxonomies, evaluation approaches, looks at things like analysis, synthesis, evaluation, etc. I'm referring to Bloom's taxonomy. I know in Australia, the Australian education system uses a slightly different taxonomy in certain areas, but I'll refer to Bloom's taxonomy, the logical evaluation levels for the purposes of today. Because of that, it requires a much deeper dive into the topic and different topics. Now, I thought I was being really clever by developing lots and lots of text content for each master's degree level. So I ended up with 400 plus pages per course. That's a lot of content. The target learners for our programs are either busy professionals, often very, very time poor, seeking to gain a high qualification, recognition, or younger, both in age and work years, with minimal background in real-world leadership experiences. So my challenge with this content, with the content, with the level and the learners, was how to design meaningful, self-directed e-learning that replicates an in-class experience whereby the students can actively apply theory. And that's the real key. It's the application. It's embedded in the name of the University of Applied Research, but also from a practical outcome. As I said, I can't see any chat at the moment. If there's any immediate questions, if Alice could prompt me, but I'll keep moving forward. There is an opportunity to interact a little bit later. Throwing darts. I refer to, and I mentioned this slide because it's a process that I went through, and it's something that I go through every time I go to design something or direct the design. Throwing darts is the term that I use for Ispring. Is a interaction-rich, rapid e-learning development tool. When I have 400 pages of content to turn into meaningful e-learning, I literally threw the dart at, I'll use that interaction because I haven't used that for a while. I'll use that one. I'll now use that one, and I'll use that color scheme. I initially didn't apply, and sometimes if I get lazy or if I'm time poor and I need to have something created quickly, I'll literally throw a dart and select. You can appreciate it's probably not the most scientific way of developing e-learning. Perhaps some of you can relate to the concept of throwing darts. The rationale for my instructional design approach. Yep, there's plenty of instructional design methodologies around. ADDIE, quite sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard of ADDIE, design thinking and learning, iterative process, the SAM model. I use a combination of all of these depending on what I'm developing and how and what the particular outcome should be. In this particular instance, for this level of learning, I found that it still wasn't quite enough. So I stopped myself from throwing darts and sat back and thought, okay, what else can I do? What else do I need to consider to create very meaningful e-learning? One of the rationales was a paper that I developed and I wrote in 2017. It was presented at a conference in 2017 called iLearning. And essentially it was a behavioural philosophy that's designed to create greater awareness of the needs of the individual. By learning more about who is sitting in front of you, I mean, it's very logical. By learning more about who is sitting in front of you and developing learning opportunities based on those particular needs, you can create exceptional learning opportunities. And in 2017, was pre-COVID, I proffered that if bricks and mortar colleges and universities don't start looking at offering far more flexible learning opportunities to replicate and mimic the flexibility of online learning, with the rise in MOOCs, the massive online open colleges, etc., that students might consider moving away from traditional classroom approaches. Now, with the advent of COVID-19, it's completely flipped my viewpoint, because all of you who work in higher education and the vet sector and the education sector, etc., it's very challenging for students, learners to come to bricks and mortar colleges. So online learning has grown very much. So I needed to consider, how can we replicate, where possible, that in-classroom approach for a self-directed learning approach. The next rationale was looking at the way that we communicate, a model of conversation. And it doesn't matter where you're from in the world, we loosely communicate and converse in a particular way. There needs to be an introduction. The introduction, without going too deeply, lets a person or group of people know you wish to communicate directly with them. The feed forward, very, very important. It's the context. This is what I want to talk to you about. These are the outcomes, etc. The body, it's the content. Feedback, again, very important to ensure that they understand and are able to apply it. And the conclusion is to let them know that that's the end of that learning block, and then we move forward. I then break that down into smaller chunks where the size of the body can be expanded depending on the complexity of the subject or the level of understanding of who's in the room. This is a particularly important approach that I've embedded in the way that I design the e-learning as we go forward. My design approach. I'm sure that all of you who do design, actual hands-on design of e-learning and or direct e-learning, have a particular template that you use. This is I know some of you may not be able to read it, but I'll be able to expand a little bit later. And I'm very happy to share this template with you. I created a design template based on the considerations of e-learning, the getting to know a little bit more about the people in the room, the structure of the presentation, the types of presentation, and also getting a greater understanding of the taxonomies and the evaluation methods. Design approach. For simplicity, I like even numbers, and for simplicity, I like to keep things as small as possible. I base the e-learning presentations on 4 key areas. Informative, the facts. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with a series of facts or some data for you to understand this topic in further depth. Instructional. An instructional presentation is designed to allow you to take that knowledge and then apply it from a skills, knowledge, and behavioural perspective. Any form of instructional presentation needs to have some sort of evaluation at the end of it. Entertaining, or loosely edutainment, an entertaining presentation approach is usually interwoven with those other areas. One of the best examples of edutainment or entertaining presentation is Sir Ken Robbins, the great TED Talk, and I'm sure that some of you, or maybe all of you, have seen it. It's that classic TED Talk where education kills creativity. It was highly entertaining, very, very informative as well. And the last presentation type is inspirational, where you use the content and the imagery to inspire people to shift their behaviour or to onboard fast within an organisation, etc. So in my design approach, I started with looking at what type of presentation is this. So you can imagine a 400-page Word document that looks at personal learning styles and organisational development and capability growth, etc. From an entertainment perspective, you wouldn't organically think that would be a really funny subject. So it would more lean towards the informative side. So I've got a quick question for you. In the chat box, which I can't see at the moment, in Ispring, these are 2 common interactions. One is a labelled image and one is a pyramid. What do you or would you use these two types of interactions for? Could you just type your responses in the chat box for me? And Alice, if you could read some out for me, please. What, if you've used these before, what do you do with them? Can you explain? Actually, I might just stop sharing for a moment and I'll have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the yes, I can. I can go back to the options if you like, but it's more about what you organically do with them. What do you do with those? So I'll just share them again.
And let me read the answers. Labeling features of an object.
Yep.
Pyramid, something like a process, sequential.
Yep. What else would you do with these, or do you do with them?
Understanding a hierarchy. Then we
Yep.
have labeled object for creating instructions. Labeled one, interactive focus on a part, process, item.
I'm just curious, how many of you really unpack these interactions and what you actually do with them? Do you have a list of what you do with these interactions, or do you have a series of favorites that you use? I'm just curious.
Let's see now the answers. Pyramid could be a relationship, like the dietary pyramid. Labeled object, interpretations of an
Interpretation,
object, yeah.
yeah. Or Una, that's interesting. Most people use them just to keep learners busy. Yep. Yeah, well, yep. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
New to Isprings.
Yep, you're quite right, Ina. The image has to relate to the learning and the point of learning. Absolutely. Okay. New to Ispring, haven't used them yet. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I will continue. One of my personal e-learning design dilemmas is there is so much choice, and there's a lot of choice, and it's I think it was Emma mentioned about making sure that the learning is linked directly to the interactions. I hope I've linked the right person with the right comment. You're absolutely correct, and that's one of the things that I started to do is to formalize my understanding in what to use when. So from an informative and instructional perspective, I use the steps, the tabs, the cyclic process, the process tabs, the accordion, the hotspots, the guided image, and the label graphics for informative and instructional. Of course, you can weave some form of entertainment in there. Entertainment is embedded all the way through that. But from an information and instructional, combination of both, these are the interactions that I use for those. I find it very difficult to use them from an inspirational area. Now, whether you agree or disagree, that's completely up to you. It's more about getting you to think more about why you use these for a particular reason. Purely from an information perspective, the glossary, the media catalogue, and the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, I use these expressly to inform. I find it difficult to use them from an instructional perspective, and I purposefully use them from an information perspective. And the last three, the circle diagram, the pyramid, and the timeline, from an inspirational and an informative perspective. In particular, the timeline. I've found that if we're talking about the evolution of a subject, it can be quite inspirational depending on what the outcome is. Also, the pyramid and the circle diagram allows you to build certain behavioral links and hierarchies that can be quite inspirational as well. So the next part of my design approach was to get a much stronger understanding of when it was appropriate to use a particular type of interaction. The next part is the evaluation taxonomies. Ispring has a absolute wellspring of different evaluation features: the multiple choice, multiple response, the essay, the Likert, Likert, the drag and drop, hotspots, etc. And again, I've been guilty over the years of, oh, I haven't used a hotspot for a while, let me use one of those. Designing and building higher education levels of learning has really forced me to think a lot more about what is appropriate to ensure that people are able to actively learn and apply what they're reading and they're participating in. So I've based this this table on Bloom's taxonomy. For the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy, it's a knowledge level, the list, recall, etc. So the features like the multiple choice, multiple response, true, false, sequence, etc. are the most appropriate ones from a lower level taxonomy, listing and recalling. From a comprehension perspective, again, essay, hotspot, drag and drop, short answer. And as you start moving, other way, as you start moving up the levels of taxonomy, the level of detail and complexity rises. So from a master's level and a degree level to a certain extent, I tend to use the numeric role playing, the branching scenarios, essays and Likerts. There's still a time and a place for multiple choice, multiple response, but not as a predominant evaluation method. This is one thing that really has helped me to start designing much stronger, more meaningful and more robust e-learning opportunities for different levels. It's really forced me to think more about what is the most appropriate method to actually get the best out of the learning opportunity. I'd like to show you an example in use. So this is it's a master's degree in leadership and management. It's the first trimester. It's the capability development block 1, people and culture. This is the first course. It just happens to be my favorite as well. Leading personal and strategic transformation practices. Fairly dry sounding subject. The criterion, it's to evaluate approaches to learning and workplace training against organizational strategic requirements. Again, sounding quite dry and quite high level. I personally find it quite fascinating. The taxonomy, they need to be able to interpret, analyse and evaluate quite a range of textual information. The knowledge is identify the impact of personal learning preferences and organisational learning theory. The resources that I have are web links to 3 sites that offer opposing views of learning styles and the Learner Guidebook. So a approach within a learning management system would be to outline the name of the course. This is the sub criterion. Here's some resources. Go and look at these websites and read a couple of PDFs, and please answer this essay at the end. That is one way. Another way, in Ispring, in Ispring Learn, Alice, Ispring Learn, the LMS. That's the right terminology I'm
Ispring Learn
using.
LMS.
So, phenomenal feature that I've only recently discovered is to build the long reads. Sorry, as I'm talking, I'm actually scrolling down a tablet and a mobile phone. It's a wonderful feature for putting a lot of text on a screen that allows people to use mobile devices. Again, I could have done that as well, but looking at the the approach that I wanted to take, that was highly conversational and looking at the type of interactions, I did something a little bit different. So this is a screenshot of the template that I use. So I've got the session title and the session timings, self-directed, so approximately 30 minutes of interaction followed by research and an essay preparation. The presentation type, it's informative. The actual presentation itself is informative. I've got my objectives there and the level of taxonomy that indicates to me the type of evaluation approach, and the structure, the introduction, the feed forward, the body, the feedback, and the conclusion. From a presentation layout, I'm going to, from the introduction and the feed forward, I'm going to use the Ispring video lecture that allows you to record a video and next to a PowerPoint, and then you can sequence it. Any characters that I'm going to use, well, you'll see I'm the only character being used for the introduction and the feed forward, and no evaluation method at this stage. From the body, I've chosen a dialogue simulation, a branching scenario, and I've used two characters, and I've loosely used the word a male and female. I'm a very diverse and inclusive character. That these are the I'm using the terminology that is in Ispring. So I've got one male and one female there. No evaluation method used during the body. From a presentation, from a feedback perspective, the dialogue simulation is I'm going to simulate a breakout room. And again, using the male and female characters. And the evaluation method of the feedback is review of the dialogue decision pathways. For those of you that are new to using Ispring, for me, one of the most powerful tools is the branching scenarios and the dialogue simulations, because not only does it allow a higher level of critical thinking and decision making for the learner, it also captures their path and emails them a copy of their decision making, and it also emails me as a facilitator or one of the professors a copy of their thinking journey. So when we have one-on-one conversations with them and or further group sessions, it allows us to go back and revisit their self-directed learning opportunity, and it really enhances their learning. So I've included that as the evaluation method. And from a conclusion perspective, they have an essay to complete, which links in with a higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. What I'm going to show you is what that looks like from a presentation. I've taken out part of the initial e-learning aspect and put it into this very short presentation at the moment. So how it starts is there's a video of me on the right-hand side talking to them and introducing myself, introducing the subject, introducing the participants, which is Jenna, who's a 25-year-old middle manager within a government agency, holds a commerce degree, studying masters in leadership to gain a broader understanding of OB, organisational behaviour. Hans is a 23-year-old student with no real leadership experience. However, Hans has graduated with a Bachelor of Business and is studying the master's degree to gain a higher level. And you, well, that's you. I've purposely cut the sound out of the video at the moment, and when we go into the dynamic scenario, it has voiceovers as well. I've purposely silenced those because it'll drive you crazy during this webinar. There might be a little bit of feedback, etc. Okay, so to start this, based on my lesson plan or presentation plan, the introduction and the feed forward was a video of lecturer introducing the session and also introducing what was coming along. So that's what happened, and when we're ready, they start. So Annie, Masters Leadership and Management, and then they start. So this is a branching scenario that has, some people call it choose your own adventure. I call it a branching scenario. What I've built or replicated is a breakout room for someone that is undertaking self-directed learning in between Zoom sessions or whatever platform you use. It's to mimic the conversations and the type of interactions that they have to get them thinking more critically and to be more engaged as they learn. So essentially, and I've chosen the language in a particular way. Hi, Danny, my name's Jenna. We haven't formally met, but I've seen you in my classes. Hans is coming shortly. So introduction again, feed forward. For this activity, we need to discuss our learning preferences and whether it has any impact on our study. Would you like to go first? Do you want me or Hans to go? You decide. In this particular situation, we'll get Jenna to start. So she hasn't really given much thought about it, but she does like reading books, but she really struggles on a computer. Strange, you know, you think reading is reading. Jenna likes to make lots of notes on the pages, and Jenna talks to herself a lot when she writes. This seems to annoy people around me. I guess I like to learn best by reading. So there's a conversation going on. You have an opportunity. You can have your turn. You can get Hans to have a go, or you can dig a little bit further into some information. In this particular situation, Jenna said that she likes to learn by reading, but she mentioned these other things. I'd like to learn a little bit more. So she then talks a little bit more about what she likes to do. She taps a pen and likes to talk to herself while she's listening to someone speak. She also has very long hair and twirls her hair and likes to move her hands around a lot. She's never really thought about why she does it. Is that something that you want to do with a learning style? So in this particular situation, because you are conversing, there's only so much you can do with simulated breakout rooms. You hand over to Hans. Hans, luckily, has a coffee. I'll have a quick drink myself. I'm getting dry. From Hans's perspective, his reading suggests that there's no real value in the concept of preferred learning styles. And I know for some of you who do work in this area that there's a great argument about, do learning styles have any weight or merit, or don't they? We can get in that discussion at a later stage. Hans, though, from what he's read previously, his belief is that preferred learning styles really don't provide much value when you're looking at designing organisational learning strategies, and it doesn't have a strong impact on organisational theory. And he's suggested, have a look at this article I read when I was doing my bachelor. Rather than a approach where you just hand out web links to get someone to read something, I'm embedding these as part of the learning. So again, I'm trying to mimic what a breakout room might look like. So if you click on there, that will open up a website from Scientific American, I think it is, that talks about the lack of value or science linked to preferred learning styles. Hans says, right, well, what do you think? Again, you'll defer to Jenna. And Jenna, well, this discussion's really got me thinking about it. She's got two articles. One argues one way, one argues another. For brevity at the moment, at this stage, we can take Jenna's advice and move on and start the essay side, or there's an opportunity to go back and dig deeper into further conversations where you give your opinion and you can dig a little bit further. For the sake of brevity at the moment, we will go to the essay. And the essay, again, it's got introduction and feed forward. Welcome, Danny. One of the great features with, again, with Ispring is it allows you to drop in some basic variables. So again, it personalizes that learning approach. It may or may not mean much to you, but it's all of the little subtleties like that that I've found make a great difference from a much richer learning opportunity. And then it talks about, now you've completed your discussions, I'd like you to review your breakout room discussion, resources, existing literature, etc. So up in the resources tab, these are the links to the articles that Jenna and Hans discussed. The learner already has their learner guide for this. And by the time they get to here, in their inbox, the Ispring and the LMS has already emailed them a copy of their learning journey. So just like in a breakout room, they've got a memory of the discussions that they've had, except better, because they've actually got a hard copy or a soft copy, e-learning copy of their particular learning journey. And then they need to start their essay. Yep. Please give me an A. Submit. And then the conclusion part, thank you for completing this essay. It's been emailed to your tutor. So I understand that there is standard naming conventions or words that are used within Ispring, etc. But following that very basic model of conversation, it allows the person to know, right, it's now gone, it's been emailed to my tutor, I can now move on to the next subject. And obviously, there are other words that you can put in there, you can embed videos, etc. I wanted to keep it nice and simple for today. Well, that's the example of what I've created for one of the learning opportunities. There are plenty more, but we're time limited today, but that's one of the examples I wanted to show you. So in summary, what I wanted to talk about was to identify the type of e-learning presentation. What is the purpose of this presentation? Am I just giving them some information? Do I want them to learn something and then apply, using the principles of 70-20-10 or learning in the flow of work or many of the other methodologies and philosophies that I'm sure that we all or some of us know about? To map the structure and the interaction types with the type of e-learning presentation, to make sure I get the right interaction and the right structure so that it does in fact support the information, the instruction, inspiration, etc. Where possible, to create conversation-like dialogue experiences. So for someone that is sitting at home at 3 o'clock in the morning where they're working through an assignment, they're not just trudging through YouTube videos, through PDFs, that there is something that is stimulating and there's something tactile about it, and they feel as though that they are being engaged. Match the evaluation method to the correct taxonomy level to make sure that if I want someone to, whether it's a certificate, a diploma, a short course, a master degree, that they're able to apply what they're learning straight away, and there is sustainable learning 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later. And most of all, to design meaningful self-directed e-learning that replicates an in-class experience whereby students can actively apply that theory. That's what I wanted to talk to you today about. I hope I haven't rushed through. Thank you very much. That is my cat. I'm not a cat person, but I love that cat, and I just wanted to show you my cat. I've finished about on time, and where possible, I'd be very, very happy to open up the chat for any questions that you may have. Thank you, Lisa. I love that cat as well.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to ask me any questions? I'm certainly not a great expert. Yes, thank you, Jasmine. Thank you. I'm glad you like the cat, but I hope there was something meaningful in the presentation as well.
Danny, thank you so much for your presentation. Let me just take a look. And there was a question, actually. Are you able to compare self-directed learning opportunities with all the students at once? You need to
let me find that question.
scroll it.
We'll go back on. Yeah, Quade. Yep, correct. Who asked the question, Alice?
Again. Just 1 second. Oh.
Here we go. Quite. Are you able to compare self-directed learning opportunities with all the students at once? Are you able to compare self-directed learning opportunities with all the students at once? Compare, as in what is more successful? I just need a bit more clarity on the question, Quade. I'm sorry for that. Are you talking about what is more effective, or how can you make it more effective? Could you just give me a bit more detail on the question, and I'll try to answer it for you. Oh, yeah, great. While Quade's typing, I'll answer Angela. Yeah, how do you evaluate how effective your method or methods have been? What metrics have you been using? Okay. Engagement. From an engagement perspective, the metrics I've been using it's more about the quality of the information that is coming in. For example, with that particular essay, it's the critical thinking that they've applied to the particular characters. Jenna has a very loose understanding of preferred learning styles. Hans is quite dogmatic with there is zero value. So the question is asking in this particular situation, to analyze the views of the two persons and themselves and the literature, and to relate it to how personal and preferred learning styles relates to developing organisational competence. So the metric I'm using is the level of argument that they are using to go either way. And as you're probably aware, some people are very fervent admirers of learning styles. Some people think it's completely irrelevant. I'm looking at what they're doing in the way that they unpack that conversation with the evidence that's there to support their particular argument. I hope that answers your question. Is this given as data for the teacher to compare the students' results? For example, the students decide to let Hans go first. Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't have a direct answer, but it's not a metric that I would have actually thought of. It's more the flow that they're going for. That do they get to the end quickly? The metric, one of the metrics that I'm looking for this is, do they get to the end quickly, then answer the question, or do they cyclically go around until they go through every avenue? That is an indicator to me, and that goes back to the previous question as well about how, when I use the word how engaged they are they clicking a button to get through, or are they taking the time to go through and look at all of the different responses? So in that aspect, that is definitely part of the analysis of that particular question. Any other questions you have for me?
Thank you, Danny.
How many of you use the branching scenarios? Excellent. How many of you, not often, yeah, time to set up, yeah, absolutely. There is a bit of time to set up meaningful branching scenarios. How many of you would like to use branching scenarios Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, really good question. I use branching scenarios a lot, not always, otherwise it's just one branching scenario after another. I use branching scenarios. As an example, if any of you work in the RTO world, the Registered Training Organisation that offers Certificate to Advanced Diploma under the AQTF in Australia and other VET programs, one of the great challenges especially if any of you have ever heard of the BSB, the Business Services Training Package, is the volume of performance evidence that's required. The BSB, the Business Services Training Package, has just been recently updated, and it's now doubled and quadrupled the amount of performance evidence that's required. I've been using these branching scenarios as a methodology to apply theory under performance evidence, where the student or the learner may not have enough work-based evidence. It's a really elegant solution, and the fact that it's all built in Ispring and it actually captures it for you, and you get an email. It is a wonderful, wonderful way of gathering evidence from a compliance perspective. That's one side. I use them obviously from a higher education compliance perspective, but to give the learner a much richer opportunity to apply theory in a simulated environment. I guess this kind of branching scenario can be applied to counselling processes that are applied by learners. Absolutely. I've built these from a first aid perspective to teach people and to help people to apply the principles of first aid when they're triaging patients. I've used it with clinical stuff, all sorts of different things. It's literally a branching scenario. Alice has dropped in a link there. I remember recently they ran a webinar, fabulous webinar on how to build branching scenarios. I've been building branching scenarios since the early 2000s when PowerPoint. It can be a little bit challenging, but if you literally, the 10-second summary, start at the beginning, start at the end, have 3 to 5 ends, and then you work your way back. It's a lot of fun, and you can do so much more with the branching scenarios at all levels. Quade, how flexible are the actual variables that the students use, i.e. the size, top of font? Yeah. Oh, gee, that's a great question. Alice might be able to help. I believe it, from a browser perspective, it's one thing has got to do with the browser, but I'm pretty confident. Quade's asking about how flexible are we able to use the variables for certain students from a dyslexic perspective, closed captions, etc. So that's more of a
thank you for
Alice
asking.
question. Could you answer that?
Content created with Ispring Suite will definitely comply with standard, if I'm not mistaken, section 508, right? So we have guides, we have instructions how to create content that will comply with that section. So let me just find it and send it to you. Just 1 second.
Una, very happy to share. I've got a pile of resources I'd love to share with you. Just drop me an email and I can flick them over to you. And again, if anyone would like to have a conversation, if there's anything, my pleasure, anything outside of today that you would like to explore a little bit more or share, very, very big sharer. If there's anyone that works in higher ed and the vet sector that is doing something, please, Anna, please do so. You can find me on there. I'll drop me an email. If there's anyone in the higher education sector, the vet sector, the education sector that use this similar tools, I'd love to learn from you as well. Anything that I can learn that supports the learners, I'd love to know. And if there's anything I can share with you, very, very happy to do so. And thank you, Craig. I'm pretty proud of the bachelor's and the master's degree. It's a very people-centric one. So thank you for asking. Any other questions you might have? Thank you, Heidi. Oh, absolutely. I got kicked out of school at 15. and I suppose I can share with you. I was told at 15 years of age, Danny, you are quite engaging. You're good at sport, but you're dumb as a bag of hammers. Because in the 70s, apparently you're allowed to say that. So that came as quite a shock to me. I really didn't think myself much of a learner. I discovered a little bit later this person called Howard Gardner that discussed the variable ways that our minds work, etc. And I discovered that my brain just works a little bit differently, and that's what drives me to help other people to learn. Okay. I was supposed to elaborate. When students are creating essays, is it monitored if they're using? No. Look. No, it's not. Absolutely, it's not. It's not monitored. But to put it into perspective, during the enrolment process, if you look at the moniker Nam Omni Doctrina Presto, which is learning for all, it's a very, very inclusive university, very, very inclusive programs that we would establish up front with the learner how best they would like to learn, whether they use, whether they have any particular needs, and we would cater to them. So really great question, Quade. But I don't believe we would get to the stage where we would have to worry about that level of plagiarism, etc. In this context, we would identify much earlier up. Oh yeah, absolutely, Anna. Boo, absolutely boo. Anyway. Yeah, look. Thank you, Lisa. That's what drives me. That they're obviously I'm not the only person in the world that's been told that they don't actually have much value to add to the world. UARD, the university I belong to in New Zealand, has given me a great opportunity to work with them as an associate professor. They've got a great ethos on diversity and inclusivity. Thank you, Quade. Yeah, absolutely, Jane. Look, I think that's a great idea. Ispring itself, Alice, Jane has just made a suggestion about if it was great if we could,
Yeah, I'm writing.
Ispring do that anyway.
Yeah, we are working on that, and just
so,
stay tuned.
yeah,
And there will be more webinars like this, definitely.
excellent. Any other questions? Pleasure, David. Thank you. I hope you got something out of it. Please drop me an email if you want to have a chat. I'm a very open book, if you pardon the pun. Name of the cat. It's Bookie. Bookstar.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Well, when you there will be a survey, so I would really glad to ask you if you fill out this survey and share your feedbacks with us, just to be sure that we provide you with more relevant content in the future. That will help us a lot. Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you, Danny, for such a great presentation.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you. Thanks for a great e-learning rapid tools. Big fan. I hope that helps some people to get a better understanding of what to do.
Okay, so I think it's time to wrap up our session then. Yeah, if you still have some questions left unanswered, feel free to let us know. You can email directly to Danny or to us. So any questions, we will be happy to answer them. You will get for sure the recording, and you will get the presentation, right? And yeah, see you at our next webinar. Stay tuned. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Yeah, and have a nice day. Rest of your day. Bye bye.